Morning, welcome back to GP Outdoors. It's cold today. Glad I got the cab. GP, I'm a new tractor owner and I see that there are so many people in this community that recommend taking your rear blade and throwing it backwards 180 degrees and drawing it through the driveway so you don't pull up gravel. I've tried it so many times and it doesn't seem to be working. What am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't work. That's right, it doesn't work. I gotta head up to the end of the driveway and I gotta clear out that 200 feet out to the concession, which I've left. I haven't got it cleaned up yet since the truck got stuck. But while I'm heading up there, I'm gonna explain to you folks why turning your blade around and trying to draw snow out of the driveway doesn't work. I can't show you because I don't want to take this whole hydraulic assembly off to show you, but I've tried it at least a dozen times or more over the years before I got it, and it just doesn't work. And here's why. So without a word of a lie, over the last 5 or 6 winters, I have probably got at least 100 or more comments from you good folks, or many of you, who have recommended to me in the wintertime, before the driveway is frozen, to spin this blade around 180 degrees or backwards and pull the blade backwards so that it doesn't dig up gravel, but it will still clear the snow. It has never worked for me, ever, except in one condition. And I'm going to explain that later in the video. But let's put some stuff out on the table. These again are my thoughts, I'm not an expert. I may not use the right technical terms, but hopefully I'll be able to characterize it properly. But let's begin here. The blade, in its natural position facing forward behind the tractor, has a concave shape to it. See that? The rear side of the blade, facing away from the tractor, has what's called a convex side. Take a look at that shape. That's the first thing to consider. Second thing, your subcompact or compact tractor has no down pressure on this 3-point hitch like those big, huge tractors do, which means that any implement you put on the back will ride up freely if it hits or comes in contact with an opposing force greater than its heft to be able to push through it. So it will naturally raise because you can't stop it from raising. You can set the level, but when you reach an obstruction or something harder than the blade or the implement itself, it will rise and then drop back down when it passes. Weight. This Landpride RB series blade weighs 282 pounds. And when you're new to tractors like I was, you think, geez, almost 300 pounds, that's a lot of weight. But in terms of operating your tractor, 300 pounds is nothing, I've learned. Weight is important with so many different aspects of operating your tractor, and this one is no different. If you bought an RB series blade like I have here, this is a 72-inch blade. If you've got a subcompact or compact tractor, your dealer most likely sold you a 48-inch or a 60-inch, especially if you have a B series. Those weigh about 248 pounds. They weigh much less. So in essence, you have very little weight to this implement. You've got a 3-point hitch that has no down pressure, and you've decided to spin this blade around and pull it with the convex face pulling forward. Are you with me so far? At the beginning of the season, as you folks know, I don't ever use the blade until I know the ground is frozen. And in fact, it was a bit of a weird winter because 2 weeks ago, as you guys saw me using it, I didn't get far down the driveway because I started pulling up gravel. And believe it or not, the 3rd weekend of January, the ground was still not frozen, which is surprising. But either way, assuming it is frozen, you guys always know, I pull the blade forward because I need it to scrape, right? So I always draw in my top link as far as I can so that I've brought this blade forward. I have a cutting edge, super important, because that cutting edge in this concave shape allows it to scrape, gather, and exit or exhaust the snow. But what happens when you flip the blade around the other way and now the convex side is facing forward? What shape is the ski on the front of my snowmobile? It's convex, it's not concave. And why is that? Because this concave shape allows the ski to ride up and float across any surface below it that's reasonably packed. It's what it's designed to do. As you go forward in the snow, these skis are designed to try to force the front end of the skidoo up, not down into the snow. Similar to the blade. So when I flip my blade around, I create the same effect as the skis on the front of my sled. I create a convex shape that I'm going to pull forward through the snow in the driveway, and I'm going to expect it to push all the snow out of the way. But this convex shape is not designed to gather and exhaust snow. When you start pulling it forward, it will naturally start to clear the snow for you, as long as the snow does not create a larger opposing force than the heft or the weight of this blade. Once that happens, this convex shape will naturally gather that snow and will eventually start to lift. And that's exactly what happens to me every time I've tried to experiment with this, as you folks have suggested. Lightweight blade, no down pressure on my 3-point, and I've created a shape that's naturally designed to rise when it hits something or it starts to face a force that's greater than its ability to push. And that's why it never works. When you've got the blade flipped around the other way and you start pulling forward and you drop it into the driveway, whether you got 6 inches or 10 inches, it doesn't matter. The blade will eventually start pulling and trying to clear the snow. But as soon as you get to a point where enough snow is backing up in front of this convex shape, it will naturally start to rise up until it finds a point where there isn't a greater opposing force. And what usually happens every time I've tried it, except in one condition, is you start pulling it, and within a very short period of time, I watch that blade rise up to the top of the snow. And I basically always end up leaving more snow in the driveway than the few inches it's able to actually clear off the top. So if you think about it, you've got packing snow, wet snow, any different types of snow conditions, especially when it turns icy or crusty, that blade doesn't get too far before it rides right up on top of the crust, because there's not enough weight to hold it down to fight the force of the snow or the icy or the crusty snow. The only time it has ever worked for me is in a fresh powder. You know that powdery, fluffy snow comes down, you get a foot of it, and you can pretty much blow it out with a shovel all the way up the driveway. It's so light. It's the only time it's ever worked for me. Which is why I bought this hydraulic kit. This kit does not allow the blade to flip around 180 degrees. If you look in the back of your Landpride manual, you'll see that there are actually 2 different hydraulic kits that you can order with these RB series blades. One is this one, which does not allow the blade to be flipped backwards, and the other kit does allow you to flip the blade backwards. It doesn't work for me. This is why I didn't spend the extra money on the other kit. If you've been following the channel for a few years, you'll remember back to some of my earlier grading videos when I was doing this parking lot, and I had humps of snow which I'd piled across the driveway. I was just learning how to do this grading and how to spread gravel, and not doing a good job of it. You may recall those videos where you'd see me with the rear blade and I was trying to push the gravel and spread it out across the driveway, backing up with the convex side of the blade facing the pile of gravel. I'd drop it down, I'd start pushing, and I learned very quickly that if you kept pushing, it got to a point where the stone or the opposing force was greater than the blade, and my rear blade would just ride up on the pile of gravel. I quickly learned that I had to take it in little steps. So I pulled forward, you'll remember, I lifted the blade up, and I just started shaving the top of the pile of gravel. Because I wasn't able to push the whole pile. I had to take it and skim the top. Drive forward, drop the blade a bit, skim the top out. Drive forward, skim the blade. It's the same thing with the snow. Once it hits enough snow, it'll immediately start to ride up because of the shape of the blade. Now, GP, are you saying that hundreds of the people in our great community here are actually wrong? I'm not saying that at all. Here's when I think it works. You have a tractor that has down pressure on your 3-point hitch. And or you've got a rear blade that weighs a whole lot more than these Landpride models. And or you're adding weight on top of this blade. And so many of you have mentioned in the same comment where you've recommended I spin the blade backwards, you've also told me to find bricks or cinder blocks and pile them on the frame of the blade and strap them down. And in fact, there's several videos on different channels where you'll see somebody dragging their blade and they'll have these big cinder blocks strapped down or chained down to the very top frame of your blade to give it more weight, to hold it down against the force of the snow or the ice. So hey, that's the world according to GP. I'd be really interested in your thoughts in the comments, and I hope this has been helpful, or at least accurate. you guys see this? So this is the part of the driveway where I got my truck stuck. And all the way back out to the concession, I have not blown it out yet, but we did run 3 or 4 skidoos back and forth through this driveway a few times yesterday. You see how hard packed that is? I really wish I could have showed you by flipping the blade, but I promise you, as I've done and tried before years ago, if you flip that blade with the convex side out, and I tried pulling it through this section of the driveway, that blade would immediately ride up on top of this hard pack, and there'd be maybe an inch or a little bit of snow getting pushed off, but most of the snow would stay in the driveway because it's not heavy enough to break through this hard pack. So I've now blown this section totally clear right to the concession and back with the blower. 550 pounds of weight I'm pushing through there with a cutting blade and 2 skid shoes. And you can see that it got a good foot out of the driveway, but it's left way too much base under here. It's always good to have a little base on top of your driveway, but when you've got 3 or 4 inches of base, that's not good. One, snow is an insulator, which means that if your driveway's not frozen yet, it's going to take a long time to eventually freeze because it's being insulated. Second thing is that when we start to get warm temperatures here and there over the coming weeks, this snow is going to turn to slush. It's going to be miserable to drive in. But this is kind of to my point about flipping the blade around with the convex side up. Blower weighs 550 pounds. That blade only weighs 282, and I don't know how much weight of that whole unit sits on the back blade. But you flip it around with the convex side up, and it would have caught this snow, and immediately it would have risen up, and it would have rode up higher. Would have got a few inches off the top maybe, but the rest of it would all be sitting here, still waiting. Let me drag the blade through and I'll show you how much snow is actually left. Okay, now we're going to blade out the section I just used the blower on. Just take a look and see how much snow gets pulled up with this blade. So that's a wrap. She's all scraped down, got the gate done, got that really nasty, treacherous corner done. I had to blade that right down to gravel because it's graded the wrong way. So if you've got any snow in that corner and you try to come through it with a vehicle, your vehicle naturally tries to slide into the forest. But hey, I hope some of the ideas I kicked around today make sense to you. As I've learned over the years, things that work for me or don't work for me may not necessarily work for you. So you've all got different properties and different climates. I've tried a ton of ideas that you good folks have given me over the years. Some of them have worked out great. Some of them just don't work here for me. And one of them is spinning that blade backwards. Thanks for sticking around. I'm going to fire it up, head back to the cabin, and then we're heading over to Guy's workshop for this afternoon. Husky Bob and Ralph and the guys are getting together for a little bit of coffee and to catch up. Have a wonderful week with your families. Please be kind to each other. And I'll see you again right here. I'm Gord Potter, and you've been watching GP Outdoors. Cheers.